Welcome to Unlikely Intersections, the podcast where intent, impact, and inquiry inspire our conversations. I'm Doc Philip Brown with my good friend, Dr. Terry Jackson, and you're at the intersection. The fascinating thing about intersections is that we go through them every day, many of them, and the way we navigate those determines the trajectory of our days and our lives. Our topic today is fairly personalized for me. It's the pivot. And as of this recording, this is about 2 days out. And by the time we air, it'll be a little over a week, I think. But I just had a major pivot in my life as I came in to work at my job with Novant Health. And it turns out that as a part of system changes, my position was eliminated. So I was off the team.
That's always an interesting place to be, right? I've experienced that before as well, and you and I have kind of talked about it, and off the air, of all the thoughts and feelings that run through you as you sit there, and you no longer the purpose for being there. That particular organization in that particular role is just no longer there, and you've been there for so long, and especially for you because this is home. And especially for you because, as I mentioned to you before, the platform that you utilized was powerful, but it's the platform that you built. It wasn't the platform that the organization built for you. You built that platform, which enabled you to go across all walks of life in this area where everybody saw you as an asset.
Well, very kind of you to say, and I appreciate that. And I've really loved, that role that I've held for a while. Still processing all of what it means for me personally, and that's going to take some time. And I just am kind of approaching it with a sense of take the feelings as they come. Understand that that's going to be a bit of a roller coaster to a certain extent. I'm going to be, that mental chatter is going to go all over the place as I sort of process all it means and the changes and everything. And at the same time, I've got to figure out how to make this pivot, right? So, what comes next? Because the role is just eliminated. I mean, it just doesn't exist anymore in that form. And it's not a personal thing, it's just, as would be said in corporate America, it's just business, right? I'm just hung up in a piece of the business that no longer is deemed to have value in the way they are assessing value for the organization.
And if you think about conversations we had several years ago when I did a little bit of work with the hospital, we kind of talked about that in the setting of executives, what the potential could be, what could happen. And it's just the corporate world. And what I thought about a few minutes ago is when you said it's not personal, it's just what happens in business. I thought about the book, 4 Agreements, and the first one. It would be the second one. Don't take anything personally, because it's not personal. It's just a business decision that was made.
Yeah, and when I think about it, as I'm in this situation, the first thing that comes to my mind is really gratitude. I've had so many rich relationships that were basically planted in that environment. Whether it's people I work with, people I connected with in the community for different kind of things, and all those kind of relationships had a sort of a natural way of occurring, an organic way of occurring, and they still can exist. I'll have to figure out how to cultivate them differently. And perhaps more importantly in this pivot is, how do I continue to have the opportunity? What environments do I create in a different way where I can continue to build new and important relationships? Because in my values of improving the health of communities, of really in the old lingo, leading our community to outstanding health is really still important to me. I believe in it. I mean, it's who I am. And I'm one of those folks who I tend to try to make my actions consistent with my belief system. And so as I've developed these relationships, as I've done this particular work, I really just poured what I believe into it, and it's worked okay. We've definitely, I think, made some progress in some ways, and that doesn't have to be abandoned. It's just somebody else has got to take that. I've pivoted, and one of the things you do, I learned how to pivot way back in the New Hampshire basketball clinic with my dad. One of the options is when you pivot, you pass.
That's right.
So basically, I have passed that foundation of work, back into the organization, who's now really in charge of the next play. And, as a community, it's very important to us that works. I mean, it's real important.
Extremely important, because you were the voice of the organization within this community. Now it's going to be interesting to see how they pivot and if there will be the same type of voice with the same type of influence. That's what makes it all interesting, right? As I listen to you, I think about the mental capacity to pivot, because it takes that, right? You got to, be prepared, even though in a lot of instances in these kinds of situations, most people aren't prepared. But I will say this, oftentimes our intuition gives us a little inkling somewhere and to say, hey, what's the possibility of this happening? And I think, one, the mental capacity for you to continue to pivot and do what's best for the greater good of the community will enable probably your platform to become much larger, even though you're no longer with the organization.
Yeah, I hope, I'll say it real simple. For me, I hope that I still have a lot of opportunities to do the work. It'll just be in a different jersey. And, it's because it's important. It's important work to help elevate the health of our community. And it's also fun, and so I really want to be able to stick with that. And right now, as I work through my pivot process, it's about handling that mental chatter that, right now, I think I mentioned to you before we started, I'm kind of in a sense of lost space right now, right? Like, and I don't even know what that means. So, part of my personal journey for a while has been, how do you trace your thoughts back to their origin, right? And so, actually, I woke up this morning thinking about that, and I've already spent some time tracing it back. So, what does that mean? Where is this sense of loss coming from? And so far I've only gotten a little way down the road, and just a small way into the process. Part of it is just the relationships that had real natural ways to interact. I need to replace those in a way, that enables those relationships to be maintained, because, for me, it's always been about the people.
Right.
My whole life has been about helping people in some way or another. When I was a school teacher, it was helping people. When I was operating on people as a vascular surgeon, it was helping people. When I have been an executive and really helping move into what is true population health, how do we create a situation where everybody has their best chance of a high level of health? That's helping people, right? It's nothing different than that. It's really that simple. And so, the sense of loss is that I've lost that vehicle, and in some ways I would make the analogy, which just hit me, so it may sound crazy. It's like a car is totaled, right? I can't drive that car anymore, it's totaled. It can't be used that way anymore. And, they take it away, and you figure out how to get a different car, or, ride a bike, ride a bus. I mean, something, whatever it takes, right, to do that.
That's right.
And so, that sense of loss is like, my vehicle is lost. That's really as far as I've gotten. Now, there probably are some other things too. But I do know that it is related to the people more than anything else. And as I've traced that origin, I realize, hey man, those don't have to be lost. Those relationships don't have to be lost. You just have to figure out different ways to maintain them. Because, one of the things, and I said this in my commencement address at UNCW recently, there are no unimportant people.
That's right.
And when I think about all the people that have blessed my life, there has been a gift from every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Either a learning or a support or a co-creation possibility,
Mm-hmm.
or so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always found, and I feel like it's just the most charmed thing, I've always found plenty of people willing to help when I needed it.
Yep.
And that has left me in such a space of gratitude, right? Because I think that's likely to happen again.
Yeah. And oftentimes when these types of things happen, and let me back up. I told somebody one day, I said, you know what, there's going to be a bigger Walmart. And Amazon popped up. And I said, somebody's going to come along and they're going to be bigger than Amazon. We may not see it in our life, but there's going to be a bigger Amazon, right? And it's going to happen. So there's going to be a bigger and better and more stylish car, or maybe in your case, truck, right?
Yeah, I'm a truck guy. True, I don't know who else is kind of cool. Everybody who knows me is like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, that's right. So there's going to be a bigger and better truck with a platform that's sturdier that will enable you to continue that work. It always happens. We've talked about things that it's funny how things align, right, in the universe. And I've always found for me, they've aligned. There might be some peaks and valleys here and there, but as I look back over or reflect, my peaks have been much higher than my valleys have ever been. When I think that there was some sense of loss, that how is this going to happen? Next thing I know, all of a sudden, it's much, much, much higher, and the platform has always been higher. And I'm sure that'll happen for you as well because of what your purpose is. Your purpose is built around supporting, helping, influencing other people for the greater good, right? The universe always takes care of that.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that helps with too, like at a personal level for me, is I've never seen myself bigger than the position I held, whatever it was, mm-hmm. right? That was not me. That was a role I was in at the time, and there have been a lot of them. I've had a really charmed career trajectory where a lot of different opportunities, but I've always just seen myself as a part of the whole, mm-hmm. A contributing member, mm-hmm. but certainly somebody that has a lot to learn as well as a lot to offer. And so when these changes come, whatever they are, you still have all the emotions about what it means, and you can be frightened, you can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can be perplexed, all that. I've actually had all that. But at the end of the day, mm-hmm. That position wasn't me. I'm just me. Yeah. Right, right. And same, and it's the same three things, right? Like, I really don't have anything to prove.
Right.
I've got a lot left to learn, mm-hmm. and I got plenty to offer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, that's something to work with, and that's something to connect through. And so, I keep coming back to that as I navigate the stress of the process.
Mm-hmm. When you're prepared and you're walking in your purpose, right, it always comes together. We've had many conversations, and so I could hear the wheels turning. I could always hear the wheels turning. There was always what more can I do? how can I approach this differently? It's just a new opportunity, right? I see it as a new opportunity to excel. Some of the restrictions may not be there because of working with an organization. Sometimes you have to be mindful how you say things or what you say. And so now, with those restrictions removed, you can probably navigate better, different, and larger. Because again, your platform was built not necessarily off of the organization, but your platform was built pretty much because you were local. A local kid that everybody knew, right? Who ascended to this particular position and knew what was important based upon values, right? You're still going to walk in those values every day, and those values are going to cause you to work with and work for the greater good of what you're already working on, right? As we often say, people say, it's probably a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and I think it's important to relate. I don't have anything bad to say about the organization, and that's just who I am.
That's right.
Like what I can say is that they serve a crucial function for our community, and it's really important for our community that it works well. So, as somebody who is of this community and for this community, all my actions are going to be aligned to help make sure that still happens. Because, just because I'm not a member of that particular team anymore doesn't mean the problems, that I was working on went away. And I know the organization is still going to continue to try to address those. It's just not me. I'm not on that court anymore. I got to go play on different court.
That's right.
And that's okay. It puts me into a space. It puts me into a really cool space of personal growth again. And as you and I, we share a similar quote a lot of times. Is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
That's right.
And that's the space I'm in now. Again, I'm looking for that, and we know how the brain works. Whatever you're looking for, you're going to find some piece that resembles that.
That's right.
So it's kind of fun. That piece of it, I've been geared toward career change in general in my life. That's who I am. But it's always been aligned through and behind those same values,
What's interesting is, as we have our conversations, we kind of make little notes, things we'd like to talk about. And I know you and I kind of talked about this on the phone, but it resonated with me again today, and that was alternate reality, right? And you were telling me that you were going through this exercise for this course that you and I will be embarking upon, which will be my second time, but you always learn something new. And so you were talking about that whole alternate reality piece that you had walked through the other night.
Oh yeah, it's so amazing. This is how the energy gets aligned, right? And some folks, from around here, most of us say it's God, and that works for me. But was already enrolled in this creativity and personal mastery course, and it's exciting that we're actually going to have the master of that class on, as a guest in a couple of weeks. But the pre-work, and of course, as a surgeon, as a lifelong student, I love homework. I'm always going to do my homework. I just enjoy that learning, that curious exploration process. But anyway, as a part of that homework, there's a journaling component, and the exercise basically, sorry, Dr. Ralph, I get this not exactly right, but hopefully it'll translate. The exercise was to come up with some situations in your life that, was a model that had you stuck. And then to create several plausible alternative realities to that situation. And then through journaling to look for evidence that the alternative reality was real. And so it's fascinating, Sunday night before, Monday's, elimination of position. My reality was that I didn't feel like my work responsibilities were clear enough. I needed more clarity. That was the current reality. It's been a space I've been working in for a while. What exactly does success look like in the work? How will we know? All these kind of things. So one of the alternate realities that I created and decided to look for was that the responsibility for creating that clarity is yours, and you'll create or co-create it, and it will increase to crystal clarity over time. And I found a couple supporting pieces of that just in my experience over the last few weeks. And then, boy, Monday morning when you come in and your position is eliminated, it becomes crystal clear that you now have to define it.
Right.
Right? Like,
that's right.
Certainly ain't nobody else. I mean, there is nobody else anymore, right?
That's
Because
right.
you're off the team and all of that. And so it was amazing. I'm like, well, okay, I better go to my second question now, because as far as, how to create an alternate reality, because that's enough evidence to prove it's true right there.
That's right. That's right. I remember the first time I went through that exercise, and I remember Dr. Rao saying, we can't change what happened, but we can change the story that we tell ourselves around what happened, right? And that's what really stuck to me. So as I reflect on past events, and I may have perceived it one particular way, and then to kind of make that shift, say if I perceive it negatively, to make that shift, I can always tell myself another story around what actually happened to put it in a positive state, right? And so that's a wonderful piece. That's probably one of the most important tools that I got out of my first time around with creativity and personal mastery. That's why I'm so looking forward to taking it again with a different group, because now, based upon my first time taking it, I'm going to see some things totally different, right? And this is going to continue to catapult my personal growth, right? And then I'm doing it with another group of people, and I get to hear their challenges as we do the weekly, the Zooms, right? And we have these conversations. It's going to be a wonderful experience to have that learning experience going through this with Dr. Rao. And again, he will be a guest on our show in the next several weeks. So we look forward to having the gentleman who created all of this.
Yeah, and what's already hit me about it just through that one experience, which is why I'm so excited about the whole thing, because, it's a great opportunity to share with other people who, have their own life experiences. But, I've done so much work in, equity, inclusion, diversity, and, the concept of implicit bias is really tightly connected to that, right? Because as you were talking about, you can create an alternative reality. You can make the story basically, what you want. The difference in doing that is that you're doing it consciously.
Yes.
It's happening unconsciously to us all the time,
That's
right?
That's right.
And we get in so much trouble when, we don't put thoughtfulness into what that reality actually represents, right? It holds one back so severely to not take the time to address, all those things that are humming around in our head and making us see the world a certain way.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking about pivoting, and because that's what the topic we're discussing, and I'm thinking about all the pivots that I've been making on a daily basis, simply because I asked myself the question, and I said this in a previous episode: how can I experience this differently? So I'm at one place at this intersection, right? And I've had an experience with it, but now I'm asking myself, how can I experience it differently so that my thoughts change, maybe my actions change, how I perceive it change. So that means at this intersection, I have to take a different pivot if I'm going to experience it differently, which is something that is conscious versus being unconscious. And that awareness in and of itself is so valuable to have when you can ask yourself that question, because now I can begin to even more have more empathy for other human beings, because I can ask the same question, what if their experience around this was differently? Or how can I help them experience this differently than what they're accustomed to? And so now you're talking about your reality of having this pivot, this life pivot as a result of what happened in the corporate setting. And it was something that wasn't voluntary. In the past, you've made those pivots have been voluntary. But now, because you have the foundation, it makes it easier, and it makes it you're more aware of what really needs to be done, because of one of your personal growth from all of the reading and the studying and the researching and the work that you've done. You're probably much more better prepared than a lot of people, because it is mental. It's purely mental.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, back to the New Hanover regional days when you were doing some transformation work with us, and one of the exercises was as simple as drive to work a different way.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it.
Like, see a different thing. And really, for a long time, it's been part of some of my personal practices, especially this time of year when it's dark in the morning still and everything. I go outside with my dog with a cup of coffee, and I walk in the dark, and I try to listen to all the different sounds I can hear at the same time. And sometimes I'm better than others. Some you hear your footfalls, you hear the dog's footfalls, you hear breeze blowing, you might hear an owl, you hear a dog barking somewhere, you may hear coyotes where I live. It's on certain days you hear the ocean in the distance. So many different sounds, and it just those are all different realities.
That's right.
For that animal or that whatever it is. And so I do think that those kind of things help one prepare. I feel like that has, helped me with a different foundation. And I'll tell you the other thing that really occurred to me almost immediately when this happened is that in my situation, and this wouldn't be true in every situation, because in my situation, I'm fortunate that going forward, I'm not going to immediately have to worry about how I'm going to feed my family or how, I'm going to put gas in the car or any kind of thing like that. In the short term, I don't really
in
have
the truck,
to,
in the truck,
right? Diesel in the truck, exactly, and gas. And so, for somebody who has served as a high level executive for a long time, who's been in a lot of the positions I have, it is an enrichment to your life experience to go through this. It helps you understand people even better. And I've had several friends who are executives, and some people who have coached me along the way, who have had that particular experience. And it's interesting, in my mind, I was always, I could intellectualize what that must have been, but I couldn't feel it.
That's right.
Now I can. So it's another shared experience that I now have. And when I am able to successfully navigate it, that'll be another way to give back, because I can help somebody else. And so I think about that, and I'm like, wow, man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I will actually be able to help another. It's almost certain that another person will find himself in a similar situation that's in my circle of friends. And, if it's immediate, we can go through it together and work through it together. And if it's down the road, I can help the person based on my experiences.
That's right. That's right.
And so it's very, like, things happen for a reason. I'm still scratching my head exactly what that reason is, because I have to listen for it and understand. But those little kernels get picked up along the way, and I'm like, yeah, that's valuable.
You said something interesting a few minutes ago. You just said you have to listen for it, and I think we were talking. I think you gave me a call after, and I said, this is a time that you just be silent, right? Be quiet, you know, because that includes the listening. You're listening from what's really happening, why did it really occur, and how is this going to propel me forward? Because it's just another life's experience, right? I remember the first time it happened to me, man, I was 3,000 miles away from home. You know, got a family, newborn on the West Coast. And I'm trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to make this happen on the West Coast? Let me go out and let me begin to make some things happen out here because no family members at the time out there. And so found a way to make it happen. Again, the universe brought everything into play that was needed and ended up, eventually coming back, to the East Coast. But been there, done that on several occasions. And so, you kind of said, okay, here's what I need to do. There's some people who will sulk. And I was like, okay, so what needs to happen? It's go time, right? What do I need to put in place to ensure that I can continue along my life's work, that purpose, right? So it's a phrase I always like to use is, don't panic, think. And of course, I don't see you as a person who would ever panic, but there are people who would panic, and that's why we see people in Wall Street when things are not going well. You hear about the people up there jumping out the window, right? Yeah. And so it's don't panic, think, be logical about, the whole process. And I know I'm not saying that to you because you are, but for those listeners, this is really who this is for, the listeners. When there comes the opportunity and you have these major pivots, it's really about being rational. It's about being logical. It's about having a plan. And knowing there all been lots of plans. It's just a matter of how do I execute and when do I execute, right? Because I can execute. I know I can execute. It's just a matter of which one do I want to execute? Where do I go? So now I just sit still, listen, and it'll come to me, the path that I need to take.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a great line from my favorite series, Ted Lasso, right? Yeah. So there are two buttons I never like to hit. That's panic and snooze. Yeah, right? Now, right. I have been known to hit the snooze button, but one of the things you learn very early as a surgeon in training is you must never panic because everyone is looking to you.
That's right.
As the surgeon to not panic, to make sure that there's a way forward from this situation that may in the moment seem out of control for the patient. And so that really, and I'm glad, this is a great example of a conversation with a trusted member of your personal board of directors is helping, right? Because it just hit me that that applies right now from the surgeon analogy applies right now, because even at the level of the company I worked for, there are other people right now who are part of those system cuts. Mm-hmm. And maybe I need to be available to help them. Mm-hmm. Much analogous to the surgeon, to be able to say, look, this is not a time, we're not going to panic. Here's some things that we can all do. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I've reached out to several other people who were, in the same situation, so that we can create a little bit of a support group, mm-hmm. right? To understand. And if anybody is listening to this who is not in that support group, who has been affected by the system-wide cutbacks, then reach out to me, and my contact information will be at the end, but you probably already have it anyway. So we're going to stay connected, and make sure that we're able to continue to help each other through all this, because it's amazing what you can do together with people. We've talked about this in other episodes, but the fact is we are so interdependent. Mm-hmm. And when we don't appreciate how much that is, it really holds us back. You know, even the trees in the woods have roots that are connected, and the health of that forest depends on the health of the connection of those roots. We're no different as humans.
That's right.
And so, you know, all those things are, you know, are bubbling around. But that's a way that I'm trying, by maintaining some of these connections with the people that were affected. That's one way that I'm using to do something that you and I talk about all the time, which is act your way to thinking. Right? Because the thoughts are confused in ways, and there's parts of things that you can't quite see yet, and all that kind of stuff. But there's certain actions you can take that help bring that clarity.
That's right.
Of what the next viable step is. And, you know, again, it's like I was joking around with a friend who had reached out to me yesterday by phone from my alma mater, UNCW. She's a professor there. And, you know, it hit me right then. I'm like, I probably need to go back and listen to my own commencement address that I gave a couple weeks ago. She just laughed, you know, and it's true, you know, because the only thing that's necessary right now to make a move is I just need to figure out what is the next viable step. You know, and then the rest of the journey begins to reveal itself.
That's right. And it's about the journey, right? It's never not about what's at the end of the rainbow, right? It's the journey to get there. But what I thought about when you were talking about the clarity and for people, I thought about what scuba divers do, right? They go scuba diving in the river, and when they first jump in, it's a little clear. Then they get middle ways, and it becomes a little bit murkier, and a little murkier. But what they have to continue to do to reach their destination is they have to keep going. And ultimately, when they hit the bottom of the river, they know what it is because you're at the bottom. But in the murky middle, it's often when people turn around or they pivot, and they make pivots that may not necessarily be the best pivots to make, but they make it because the murky middle, the messy middle, it becomes scary. But you just have to continue along the journey until you get to the bottom, the floor of the river, understanding that it's just a part of the journey. The murkiness is a part of the journey.
Yeah, it kind of, you know, it takes me back to sports, right? And, you know, you learn basketball to pivot, you know, forward pivot, reverse pivot. And, you know, lots of reasons why you pivot, you know. And sometimes you pivot into a trap, right? You pivot into the defense's trap. And it doesn't mean you can't get out of that either, but it's a little more difficult in the moment, and it carries different risks, you know. And so it's still part of the game, though.
That's right.
And learning along the way of how to navigate that particular new intersection, if you will, right? You pivot into a trap.
That's right.
Got to get out of here. It's part of the game.
That's right.
You know, and you may turn it over on that attempt, and you know, and you can consider that a failure, but you learned a lot about how to navigate that trap the next time.
That's right. You learn what not to do the next time so you don't get caught in it. I sure wish my NC Central Eagles could have figured that out. Figured that out the other night when we gave the ball up about 5 times because we couldn't inbound it. We ended up losing, but that's another story. But they needed to pivot. But you know, the mental capacity to pivot. You know, that's something that we all have to continue to develop, right? We don't think about it consciously. It's something that, for the most part, we don't think about it until it happens, right? But that whole piece of having been an executive and anticipation of what could potentially happen, right? The what if question, right? It always, you know, because it provides so many scenarios. You know, what if this were to happen? Now, what if it happened? How do I pivot, right? It all fits with what we've been talking about over a period of time, and that is how do we navigate this change? And sometimes the transformation of it all, right? What's going to come out at the end, we don't know, but we know that the journey is well worth it.
Yeah, and it's the process is the process, right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether you're talking about sports or life or anything else, but there are many things that I've done over the course of the last several years. I mean, I can tell you that it's interesting how things hit you, but at the very first moment I heard that there was going to be a partnership exploration, that one of the possibilities out of that was that the organization would be sold. I realized immediately that as an executive vice president, it was unlikely that I would survive that. I can remember sitting in that meeting, and the first thing I did while the meeting was still going on, I don't recommend this multitasking, by the way, but that's a whole nother episode. I started making a list of things I needed to make sure I got taken care of and done to provide a viable next step. And, that was probably close to 4 years ago. I've had to go back. But, I've done every one of those things and some more that occurred to me during my dedication to that process. And at the end of the day, I think, it is going to work out, and it's going to be, there's going to be a viable next step. And it's just up to me to listen for it and be able to see it and to have the guts to take it when it shows itself. But there's a lot of practicing fundamentals that went behind all of that. And, I'm happy to help people understand what that is too, if they may think that they're facing a similar situation. I mean, there's no sense in folks not taking advantage of someone else's help.
Right.
Like there's a lot of times we think, and gosh, I mean, surgeons are notorious for this, that they have to be the one to solve the problem. And fortunately, somehow over the course of my life, I've been able to avoid that false thinking. But when someone is available to help you, it's good to take it, because it's also helping them. There's a reciprocity function that helps give them meaning and helps make you collectively to create new things. And, in a lot of ways, that's just what invention and innovation is, right? Creating new things or creating new ways to do things. It's the mindset that has to exist that, it goes back to that very fundamental, again, commencement address. It's almost like I knew what was happening, but I didn't, right? It's like an alternate reality. Is first of all, expect to need help.
Right.
Expect to be needed, secondly. And third, expect to be changed. And that particular mindset translates into everything. It opens the world of possibility. And so I'm in a position I get to try all that now,
Right.
So
I'm
I'm actually looking forward to it. That part of it actually is very exciting to me.
Yeah. Just understanding the power of those words, opening up the world of possibility, because there's lots of people who may think otherwise because they'll, fall into victimhood, if you will. But now it's really, so what are the possibilities of where I am? There's so many possibilities, right? I'm not going to say it's infinite, but it's very vast, I will say, because now you can co-create and create whatever you choose to create, right? Because you have the time, you have the thought process, and you understand it. And now that you're willing to help others, you can help them kind of see the light as well, because I can tell you, and I know that all of them are not seeing the light, having been through it. All kinds of emotions and thoughts run through your head, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, all right, I gotta make something happen. So whatever this possibility is, I need to be able to sit and listen for whatever it, and then when it presents itself, I have to be able to see it, because everybody can't see.
Yeah, and I think you said something really powerful there about the sort of use the darkness metaphor, right? And at times it's dark in my mind too, right? Like there's sadness along with this. There's a sense of loss. There's all those things, and that's just part of the path. But that's not a huge part of it unless I make it be a huge part of it, right?
That's right.
Like I can. First thing I got to do is recognize that those thoughts are in my head, that they're whispering in my,
That's right.
rattling around in between
That's
my
right.
ears,
That's
and
right.
I'm like, well, that's just the story I'm telling myself right now.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And what's amazing, and I learned this from Dr. Rao also, is when you recognize and acknowledge that chatter is happening, it tends to go quiet.
That's right.
And it at least gets replaced by something, or oftentimes you have a momentary moment of just a moment of quiet where it's like, okay, I'm listening again. I'm in a different space. I'm not tense. My blood pressure's not up. My heart's not racing. I'm not, breathing hard because I'm stressed. And that's a great opportunity to reset and look at possibilities. I remember you coined the term, I don't think it's a real word, but I love the term, and I've used it a million times, possibilitarian.
Yeah, that's it.
Right?
That's
It's like, just I want to be the kind of person who can see many different possibilities. And then also, I have been the kind of person who can execute, right? Whether it is bringing something into reality for the community, or envisioning something that needs to happen in surgery, or in my whatever it is, I've proven the ability to execute. So I have confidence in that, right? And so, once I'm able to see the possibilities, I have full confidence that I can execute. I mean, I won't, it'll take other people. It'll take all these kind of, take help here and there, but I know it can happen based on my own track record. And that's kind of the space that I try to spend more time in. And, my mom and dad are always giving me great counsel still to this day. Right now it's a lot about patience. And it is about challenging myself to think of what are all the different possibilities. And that is hard. You have to write it down. What are all the different possibilities? And then from that is one step. And not only do you then have the opportunity to take one of those possibilities, a new one might be revealed in the moment.
That's right.
And so it just goes, and it's like, it may not be infinite, but it's way more than I can ever undertake.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And so, for my little self, for all intents and purposes, it is infinite.
It's just the ability to see, right, and to recognize. And what you said that was powerful, and I hope that the audience really think about this. You've proven to yourself your ability to execute. That's powerful to me, because that's something that I say. I've already proven to myself what I can do, so I know that I can do it. So it gives me the confidence that when I'm supposedly out here in this remote area that I've never been before, that I know that regardless of what happens, I can execute, because I've already proven it to myself. There's so many people that I would like to say haven't proven it to themselves. And so when I'm doing some coaching, I ask people to look at the little wins. The little wins, a little win is going from the first grade to the second grade, right? The second grade to the third grade. You learn how to read. Those are the little wins, but those little wins add up to major wins. And when you count the little wins are always going to add up to more than the losses. So you've already proven to yourself what you can do based upon your little wins. Now you get some bigger wins in life, right? And that just adds to it. But all of that should add to the confidence that you have in your own ability, because it really boils down to knowledge of self and what you can do and what you can't do. But if you're not counting that, if you're letting others talk to you and telling you what you can't do without going back to all your little wins, then you'll be, quote unquote, defeated. And I don't believe in that, because when people say, well, would you ever consider going back into the corporate world? I say, no, not really, because I've already proven to myself what I can do by myself, with myself. And when I say by myself, meaning owning my own or having my own organization, not that I did it by myself, because it always takes co-creation and collaboration and networking, right? Getting and being, understanding the ability to be in the right place at the right time with the right people to make things happen. And so I've proven to myself that I can do that. So why would I? When I can go out with some of those major organizations and do some of the same things that they're doing with the right network of people, right?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of one of the favorite things that I like to ask folks when I'm coaching them is, especially, when they're stuck, right? They say, I can't do that, or I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I like to first ask, what evidence do you have that you can't do it?
That's right.
And it's remarkable. A lot of times there's no answer to that question.
No evidence
right?
whatsoever.
And you give it that long pause, right? And you're just kind of looking at folks and saying, oh, come on, there's got to be some reason that you believe that you can't do this. And ultimately, the next level question is, of course, well, what evidence do you have that you have skills to move from this place?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like popcorn popping at that point, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just that people are stuck and they can't see in that particular point in time. And sometimes they need just a tiny little bit of help to get to the next place. Right. And then it goes. It kind of reminds me, the small wins is so powerful. And, we talk about it in the business context and everybody's like, yeah. But I think about it in the basketball clinic context, right? Like, I can remember how my dad ran those clinics, from the littlest to smallest kids. You're learning to shoot a left-hand layup, and the coordination is not there. It's different than your dominant hand if you're right-handed and all that. And you start out without the ball, right? Just 2 steps and jump. And you work right on through being able to run and do that. Then take a ball, but don't bother dribbling and do that. And then dribble and do that. And that is all the small wins that ultimately then you see a player who's highly developed, college, professional. They can do that left-handed layup all kinds of different ways because they've proven to themselves through repetition. Hey, this can happen. And another cool thing I think happens along the way with that, and same analogy, right, is that repetition of fundamentals is what gives you instinct, right? And so you think about Michael Jordan and some of the shots that he made from some of the positions he made them, especially inside. He couldn't see the basket. He just knew where it was. And we see that in modern day too. And the same thing happens as we're navigating these life journeys, right? As we go back and we look at all these fundamental places we've been, how we've moved to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And then we trust that instinct that we kind of know where the basket really is anyway. Take a shot.
Right. That's right. And in life, we always have to pivot, right? It's just a matter of knowing where we have to pivot to and where we're pivoting from. So when I make that move to the left and my angle changes and my pivot changes, I just know where the basket is. So I can still put it up, right? And I can still make the shot because I know where it is. I understand the pivot subconsciously and consciously.
Yeah. And, good things happen.
That's right.
Right? Like, you miss the shot, but you have a chance to get a rebound, or your teammate has a chance to get a rebound and make something good happen. And I love the old saying, "I've missed every shot I didn't take."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so having the courage at the moment of truth to take the shot is really what I call execution. It's like, and you may execute that shot to perfection. Or you may learn from its imperfection.
That's right.
But either way, it's growth.
That's right.
And again, we so often talk about the journey, rather than the destination or outcome. That's what that's all about to me.
That's right. That's right. And the journey, you know, what came to mind just a few minutes ago was muscle memory. Because a lot of it's muscle memory, right? You reflect back on what you did, how you did it. If you made the shot, you reflect back on the muscular movement. If you didn't make the shot, you know that wasn't the right way, you know, to take that shot. So it's all a learning process. That's all it is. It's never failure. It's all, how do I learn from not doing this the way that it should have been done so that I can make the necessary course correction, real-time course correction, because pivoting in life is really about real-time course correction.
Absolutely.
Right, to make sure that it happens.
Well, I'll tell you, man, this has been a great discussion. I kind of want to close with our listeners by saying, you know, like, I'm not going anywhere. I plan to continue to do good work in our community. I've loved doing that. I'm going to continue to do it. I hope you'll keep listening to Unlikely Intersections. This is great fun. If you want to pick us up, it's unlikelyintersection.com, or you can catch us on Facebook or YouTube, Unlikely Intersections. You can still find me on LinkedIn at Doc Philip Brown. I got a new website coming soon. It's going to be docphilipbrown.com. We'll get that out when it actually launches. And then, Terry, where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Terry Jackson, PhD. And we hope you continue to listen, like, and comment on our podcasts as you see them on YouTube or Facebook. And we will be doing a lot of Monday Lives, so be aware. Monday morning live, Unlikely Intersections with Dr. Philip Brown and Dr. Terry Jackson.
We'll see you at the next intersection.